Thank you for being here. With over 70 years of experience in financial markets, I've come to understand that disruption doesn't always arrive with fanfare. While most attention goes to crises, conflicts, and sensational news, I've been observing something more fundamental. A silent transformation is taking place in our economic system, one that doesn't announce itself loudly, but spreads through computing networks and expands with each algorithm created. What I'm witnessing isn't merely another innovation. It represents a fundamental shift in how we understand productivity, investment, and economic participation. Artificial intelligence is already transforming business operations and strategic planning. More significantly, it's changing who gets to participate in wealth generation in tomorrow's economy. This transformation won't dominate headlines until the moment has passed. And when it reaches full momentum, the question won't be about its impact on our lives. It will be about whether we've prepared ourselves to evolve or risk being left behind. Artificial intelligence and automation aren't theoretical concepts. They're active forces driving change. In my field, we evaluate impact through profits, efficiency ratios, and investment returns. By these standards, these technologies are fundamentally altering the rules. The question isn't about AI's potential to reshape our economy. That's already occurring. The critical issue is who controls the technology and who possesses the infrastructure. Wealth is accumulating among those with exclusive access to advanced algorithms and computational power. We're not experiencing widespread technological advancement. We're witnessing a concentration where efficiency improvements may no longer result in rising wages across society. This violates a fundamental American principle. When workers don't benefit from increased productivity, the system stops building shared prosperity and starts deepening disparity. And let me be direct, this transcends economics. It's fundamentally about values. Let's examine where capital is flowing. Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, these individuals aren't simply technology pioneers. They're financial strategists with enormous control over digital systems. Their artificial intelligence investments aren't charitable endeavors. They're strategic actions to secure control over future employment landscapes. The priority isn't improving worker conditions. It's maximizing efficiency and minimizing human dependency. As someone who's invested in productive enterprises throughout my career, I don't criticize optimization itself, but I do caution against systems where workers become expendable while ownership stays concentrated. We're developing a framework where the machinery operates without beneficiaries. The American economy flourished when workers and investors both prospered. If that equilibrium fails, we're not simply facing technological change. We're experiencing a breakdown in the social compact that created the middle class. It's easy to imagine that today's technology leaders spend sleepless nights, concerned about average families and grocery costs. But from my decades of observation, capital doesn't worry. It multiplies. And the reality is that artificial intelligence and automation represent the most powerful multiplication tools we've encountered in recent history. They decrease workforce needs, optimize processes, and expand profit margins dramatically. In executive suites, this is labeled efficiency. For communities, it means job loss. You don't need advanced degrees to understand the trajectory. When machinery can perform skilled work without rest, healthcare costs, or negotiating rights, investors celebrate. But ordinary people suffer the consequences. I've witnessed considerable innovation throughout my career. But this development isn't about faster manufacturing. It's about eliminating workers from the process entirely. That's not simply economic progress. That's a fundamental restructuring of labor's place in prosperity creation. Let me be explicit. When machines assume human functions, profits don't disappear. They redistribute upward. And if we maintain this direction without intervention, we'll witness growing division, not just in earnings, but in possibilities. I've always maintained that America functions best when opportunities are widely available. Yet what's approaching in the coming decade threatens to erode that foundation. I'm not trying to create panic. I'm raising a thoughtful warning. If we revitalize American manufacturing as we must, people should be central. Historically, industrial expansion created pathways for millions to advance. Today, if we automate without consideration for workers, we're constructing barriers rather than pathways. Efficiency shouldn't become justification for leaving people behind. We cannot accept a revival that neglects the very individuals it should serve. Let's be honest with ourselves. An impressive new manufacturing facility means nothing to a region if it employs machines instead of people. I've reviewed the forecasts. Millions of automated units all designed to outwork and outlast human employees. This may benefit financial reports, but it's inadequate replacement for meaningful employment. The future that Elon Musk describes may operate on efficiency and technology, but communities still depend on income, on meaning, on engagement. Distribution centers, restaurants, shipping facilities, these aren't merely expense categories. They represent the economic foundation of communities nationwide. If we substitute humans without reinvesting in their futures, we're not progressing. We're withdrawing. The question isn't about automation's inevitability. It's whether we create a future benefiting everyone or only equity holders. We're not discussing theoretical possibilities. We're observing a fundamental transformation happening now. Millions of secure middle-class positions are quietly vanishing, not through mass layoffs, but through gradual automation. Consider Amazon as an example. Since 2022, they've eliminated over 27,000 positions. Simultaneously, they've introduced more than 1 million automated systems throughout their distribution network. This isn't optimization. It's large-scale workforce displacement. In investing, we constantly identify pivotal moments. This is one. The point when machines begin surpassing humans, not just in performance, but in employment numbers. And the concerning aspect isn't the technology itself. It's the absence of support systems for displaced workers. If we continue celebrating this as progress without considering the human element, we're establishing conditions for recovery that never reaches ordinary people. In 2016, Foxconn, a major manufacturing contractor for companies like Apple and Google, substituted 60,000 employees at one Chinese facility. Not gradually reduced, not retrained, replaced entirely. That wasn't the conclusion. Currently, they're planning completely automated operations where entire shifts might consist of sensors rather than personnel. More recently, their chief executive, Young Liu, made a significant statement about AI. He suggested major corporations might no longer need to transfer jobs internationally. This statement isn't just forecasting. It reflects changing economic priorities focused on control and profitability. But here's what's paradoxical. Decades of globalization were defended based on labor cost reduction. Now, with automation replacing even inexpensive labor, that rationale disappears. What emerges is a different kind of competition, not between nations, but between capital and humanity. And without intervention, this competition concludes with society as spectators. Why transfer work to low-wage regions when automated systems don't require salaries? That's the new calculation driving manufacturing decisions. But the impact extends further. Transportation, among America's largest employment sectors, faces similar transformation. Millions of positions, from freight operators to transit drivers, face risk not from international competition, but from domestic automation. While many envision cleaner, more efficient transportation systems, and appropriately so, we must acknowledge that efficiency can extract human costs without careful planning. A driverless future may appear attractive conceptually, but behind each autonomous vehicle is an absent paycheck, a disrupted family, a severed connection to economic participation. In our urgency to modernize, we must question not just what can be automated, but what should be preserved. Because advancement without participation isn't prosperity, it's isolation disguised as progress. These vehicles won't require operators. That's not some future possibility. It's current corporate strategy. FedEx, a company recognized for logistics excellence, is already operating driverless freight on Interstate 45 between Dallas and Houston using Aurora's technology. Walmart, another major American retailer, is implementing autonomous trucks for regional deliveries in Arkansas through Gatik. These aren't experimental concepts. They're functioning systems in operation. In investing, we monitor early implementation to recognize major shifts. And this one is evident. Transportation, a cornerstone of working-class employment, is being quietly redesigned without human operators. It's not about feasibility. It's already reality unfolding at scale. For every mile traveled by algorithms, there's an uncollected wage, an unposted position, an unnecessary role. And when financial efficiency advances this rapidly, society rarely adjusts in time. Kodiak Robotics is currently transporting freight for IKEA throughout Texas, without any person in the vehicle. Meanwhile, Waymo is providing autonomous transportation across major American cities from Los Angeles to Atlanta. These aren't technology demonstrations. They are functioning models with active implementation. In principle, a thriving startup environment seems beneficial, but for typical workers, that optimism fades quickly if fundamental white-collar positions disappear. And that's the danger we're confronting now. The disruption won't remain confined to manufacturing or highways. It's advancing into offices, customer service centers, and administrative departments, roles that previously required university education, but are now vulnerable to neural networks trained to exceed human performance. In finance, we describe this as margin compression. In society, it's called displacement. And unless we redesign how workers share in productivity gains from innovation, we risk constructing an economy that no longer requires its people. Dario Amodei, founder of Anthropic, a significant player in advanced AI, has stated directly what many privately fear. He anticipates that over half of all entry-level white-collar positions could disappear within 5 years. That's not speculative fiction. That's strategic analysis from someone at the center of development. Recently, a Senate report under my committee's oversight found that nearly 100 million American jobs face vulnerability over the next decade. This includes 40% of registered nurses, 47% of truck drivers, 64% of accountants, 65% of teaching assistants, and nearly 90% of fast food employees. These figures aren't theoretical. They represent families, home loans, education debt, local economies. If productivity becomes our sole metric, we'll achieve efficiency but lose substance. The future of employment isn't simply a policy matter. It's a question of national character. And if we fail to address it, we won't just lose positions. We'll lose faith in the fundamental promise of opportunity. Even with such large numbers, I'm not certain we're grasping the complete picture. In June, Jim Farley, the chief executive at Ford, indicated that artificial intelligence could eliminate nearly half of all white-collar positions in the United States within the next decade. That's not some marginal perspective. That's a traditional automaker discussing corporate employment at scale. Around the same period, Elon Musk said something that impressed me more as a philosophical shift than technological prediction. He forecasted that jobs, as we understand them, might become hobbies, optional recreational activities. The concept should give us pause, because for most Americans, employment isn't entertainment. It's income. It's self-respect. It's order. When leaders of enormous enterprises begin characterizing jobs as leisure pursuits, we need to examine carefully what kind of future is being constructed and who truly benefits. Musk wasn't isolated in this view. Bill Gates presented a similarly stark perspective earlier this year. He indicated that humans might no longer be essential for fundamental functions, manufacturing products, transporting items, or even growing food. Now, I've experienced enough transformations to understand that technology has always displaced certain labor, but it also generated new industries, new requirements, and new advancement opportunities. What distinguishes this wave is the compression, the velocity, the breadth. In investing, time is advantageous. In disruption, speed prevents adaptation. If essential human tasks are automated without a framework for social reintegration, we won't just witness lost income, we'll see lost identity. And unlike previously, these aren't positions being transferred abroad. They're vanishing completely. And that demands a different kind of leadership to address, one that values more than market dominance and machine productivity. Now here's where the discussion transitions from data to society. If even a fraction of what Musk and Gates project materializes, we're facing tens of millions of Americans unable to secure employment, not from lacking abilities, but because the positions no longer exist. That transforms everything. How do families manage medical expenses, housing costs, food purchases? When income ceases but obligations continue, the mathematics fail. But this transcends finances. Employment isn't only about sustenance. It's how people contribute, how they connect, how they discover meaning. We constructed a society around that formula. Dismantle it, and the consequences won't just impact the economy, they'll affect the nation's spirit. And throughout my years observing markets and humanity, I've never witnessed sustained prosperity emerge from abandoning the majority. From my earliest experiences, I've believed that work transcends compensation. Whether you maintain facilities or perform surgery, your contribution defines your identity. Work provides life structure. It connects individuals to purpose, to community. I've encountered thousands throughout the decades, from factory workers to financial professionals, and nearly everyone wanted the same thing, to have significance. That aspiration doesn't originate from earnings. It comes from being valuable. Now imagine removing that, not from one individual, but from an entire generation. That's not simply joblessness. That's a fundamental crisis. When productivity no longer requires people, we don't just lose employment. We risk losing the very structure that maintains families and communities. And that, in my assessment, is more threatening than any quarterly profit decline. Artificial intelligence is advancing at a rate that even experienced analysts find challenging to monitor. And while I've consistently welcomed innovation, I've also witnessed how uncontrolled acceleration can dismantle the human element. When machines begin managing not just functions, but relationships, determining who qualifies for assistance, who gets employed, or who receives attention, we enter something far more intimate. This isn't only about automation. It's about identity, about compassion, about substituting connection with computation. Can AI benefit humanity? Certainly, with medical analysis, supply chain management, and accessibility, it already has. But when tools become replacements for trust, we enter hazardous territory. Throughout my lifetime, I've witnessed technology used to empower. I've also witnessed it used to separate. The distinction is narrow, and it's narrowing daily. Technology must always serve as means, not the objective. If we permit it to develop solely under the guidance of those already at the summit, we shouldn't be surprised when others struggle to ascend. I've never opposed profit, but I've always believed that profits without purpose ring hollow. A more efficient world signifies very little if it disregards the emotional, physical, and spiritual requirements of its people. What value is abundance if it's restricted by algorithms? The genuine return on innovation isn't calculated in stock valuation. It's in whether people lead superior, healthier, more purposeful lives. So where does that position us? I don't pretend to possess a complete solution, but after a lifetime examining cycles, I understand this. Systems that exclude ultimately fail. The path ahead must encompass every American, not just those holding patents or investment portfolios. Let's begin with fundamentals. When productivity increases, compensation should follow, but too frequently the benefits flow one direction, upward. American workers today are nearly 4 times more productive than they were in the 1940s when the 40-hour work week became standard. That's not a minor improvement. That's revolutionary growth. And now, with artificial intelligence and automation amplifying efficiency further, we face a decision. We can continue pushing people toward exhaustion, or we can reconsider work's rhythm itself. A 32-hour work week without reducing wages isn't extreme. It's logical. It's a method to distribute automation's benefits with the people whose efforts constructed the system initially. And beyond that, it's an indication that progress doesn't mean accelerating faster, but living better. A reduced work week isn't merely a benefit. It's a realignment of values. For millions of Americans, additional time means improved health, stronger families, greater freedom. But time alone is insufficient. We also require balance in governance. That's why I believe major corporations should include genuine employee representation on their boards, just as Germany has implemented. 45% of board positions reserved for workers isn't just democratic, it's intelligent business. It introduces practical wisdom into strategic discussions. It grounds innovation in actual experience. And it ensures that those impacted by technology participate in how it's implemented. When people are entrusted with responsibility, they meet expectations. Distributed power isn't a threat to capitalism. It's safeguard against its extremes. Employees deserve more than input. They deserve ownership stakes. If workers are contributing to profit generation, they should also participate in ownership. And the nation's largest firms, I believe at least 20% of equity should be allocated directly to employees. Not through ambiguous incentive structures, but through actual shares, genuine participation. That kind of alignment cultivates loyalty, long-term perspective, and stability. It connects companies to the communities they operate in, and it redefines wealth creation beyond inheritance or privileged access. I've always believed that the strongest businesses are constructed when everyone works towards shared goals. Common ownership achieves that, not through rhetoric, but through structure. Corporate profits should never be viewed as exclusive property of a select few. They result from collective effort of intellect and labor working together. That's why I believe the next advancement is expanding employee ownership nationally. When workers become owners, not symbolically but through real equity, they transform from budget line items to decision participants. They care more deeply. They remain longer. They build more thoughtfully. I've witnessed directly how shared ownership alters behavior, from break rooms to boardrooms. And in a world being reshaped by automation, providing people meaningful stakes in enterprises may be our strongest defense against widespread disconnection and disenchantment. Here's a principle I've consistently followed. We should never subsidize strategies that damage society. Yet currently, we distribute billions in tax incentives to companies that eliminate positions and automate without accountability. That doesn't build strength. It builds frustration. Instead, I believe it's time to establish a rational structure, a robot tax, not to penalize innovation, but to rebalance its results. If machines are replacing people, then portions of those efficiency gains should be reinvested directly into affected individuals' lives. Retraining, healthcare, community investment, that's not anti-business. That's sustainable capitalism. AI and automation aren't adversaries, but unmanaged transition is. And history demonstrates that when disruption isn't coupled with responsibility, inequality expands until the entire system destabilizes. Technology is rewriting our economy's blueprint. That's undeniable. But what's not predetermined is who benefits from that transformation. In my view, we must intentionally guide this transition so it elevates all Americans, not just the most affluent boardrooms. That requires intelligent policy, responsible capital, and returning to fundamental principles: dignity, participation, shared prosperity. I've dedicated my life to studying markets, and I've learned this: capital flows toward trust. If we lose that trust, we lose more than jobs. We lose unity. So now is the moment for clear thinking, courageous ideas, and above all, collective determination. The conversation starts here, and every voice, including yours,